Welcome back to the Takeout. As it looks now, Congress will head into the new year without extending Affordable Care Act tax credits, subsidies. I sat down with Republican Senator Tim Sheehy of Montana and Democratic Senator Alex Padilla to discuss that matter, as well as a piece of legislation they've drafted to deal with American forests, wildfire protection, and preparation. Here's part of our conversation. Senators, 2 votes yesterday on extending Obamacare enhanced tax credits. Is that the end of it, meaning these things are going to go away and Americans are stuck?
Senator Thunes, I think, correctly stated that at this point we need to find a 60-vote threshold solution to fix this problem. It doesn't look like we're there, so then we're going to keep working through next week and see if we can get something done.
Is this a dumb and dumber, like you're telling me there's a chance situation, or is there really not going to be a resolution before these expire?
I couldn't tell you.
Senator Padilla?
I think the ball's in Republicans' court. The spike in cost, the spike in premiums is absolutely avoidable. That's why we put forward just a clean extension of the premium tax credits. And let's continue to work together to try to reduce cost of health care overall, avoid it. And look, I'm a little bit optimistic. A couple months ago, when we first voted on the Democratic plan, a couple Republicans crossed over, voted with us. Yesterday, there was 4. And so maybe in time, with a little bit more outreach, a little bit more sharpening of the pencil, we can pick up the sufficient bipartisan support.
What if you went from 3-year extension to 1 year?
Look, I'd be open to that if that means getting, people avoiding this fiscal crunch and not being able to avoid health care.
Would 1 year work for you?
I think that the reality is, like Alex said, both sides, I truly believe both sides want to bring down the cost of health care. I mean, that's at the end of the day the goal here.
Right.
Now, we can say...
But you know and I know that's a complicated argument.
Sure,
it's a lot of policy and a lot of
that's how we got here,
there.
though. But that's how we got here. Was this is so complicated, let's just kick the can. And then we kick the can a year and 2 years. That's how we got to $38 trillion in debt. That's how we got to expensive health care, is this is complicated. So both sides want to bring it down. Both sides want pre-existing conditions covered. Both sides want Americans to have access to affordable and good health care.
Quality health care.
Exactly. But clearly what we've been doing on affordability hasn't worked. And if we're going to keep saying, well, this is too hard to solve, let's extend it 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, at some point we're not going to solve it. So I think we're not going to solve it in the next week. I think that's pretty clear. There's going to be an interim solution of some kind. And like Alex said, we're having folks cross the aisle both ways, so we're going to sharpen the pencil. But I think at some point in the next year, we are going to have a bipartisan discussion of how do we fix the underlying issue of affordable health care.
I don't disagree with that necessarily, but I can't help but point this out. Look, we've come to the table with other ideas on how to reduce the cost of health care, was tackling the cost of prescription medicines, for example, or imagine inserting a public option. Right, more competition in this space is good for everybody, including in our effort to bring down costs. But for 15 years, I've been hearing repeal and replace, and repeal and replace. Republicans, with all due respect, have gotten really good at repeal. Haven't done it, but you talk a good game. But I've never seen a proposal on the replace side. 15 years.
Yeah, truth is, Republicans are in control now.
He's correct about that.
Yeah,
last part.
Sure.
You agreed with that.
We owe the American people a plan, a cohesive plan from our side. There's no question we do. And I think our conference has been vocal about the fact that we need to be for something. And that's next year.
I want to ask you an open-ended question. Finish this sentence for me. Immigration policy under Trump 2.0 in 2025 did what?
Secure the border.
Anything else?
Secure the border was the #1 priority. That's what he ran on. That's what's happened.
Any other things come from that policy and its implementation other than securing the border?
Drop in crime.
Senator Padilla?
Look, I think it's created terror and fear in communities across the country, and there has not been a real drop in crime. Actually, to the opposite. When you start diverting resources, not just within the Department of Homeland Security, but even in the Department of Justice, to immigration enforcement that has by and large detained, deported, nonviolent criminals, and you're taking your eye off the ball of human trafficking, drug trafficking, other heinous crimes, because the task forces, the folks in charge of enforcing those laws are redirected to other assignments. I am really worried, not just about potential for additional heinous crimes domestically, but our national security, because the Department of Defense has been brought in to this enforcement as well.
Senator Sheehy, do you believe this administration has only gone after the worst of the worst?
I think any response to 10 to 15 to 20 million illegal immigrants coming into the country, whether they're migrant workers or whether they're transnational criminal organizations, that was a very messy few years. I don't think anybody can argue that having hundreds of thousands of people cross in a disorganized, unvetted way created a huge problem. And I don't think it's reasonable to expect that fixing that problem is somehow going to be perfectly executed and perfectly orderly. That was a mistake that the Biden administration made. That was a bad decision that the American people said in November 5th, 2024. They didn't like that decision. They didn't believe that having, we don't even know how many, that's the scary part, 5, 10, 15, 20 million people flooding into the country in a very short period of time was good for America, good for our economy, or good for our safety in our streets. So I think solving that's going to be tough. And I don't think anyone said it was going to be perfect.
All three of us care a great deal about the western part of our country. I grew up there. You represent Montana, California. Forests are a huge issue. Fire is now a preeminent concern for those who govern western states, those who live in western states, those who insure western states. What can Washington do to change the status quo, which is clearly not working? Senator Padilla.
Well, it's an issue I've been working on for years. I do think the tragedy, we're coming up on the one-year anniversary of the Palisades Fire, the Eaton Fire in the San Gabriel Valley, is really the impetus for enough is enough. There has to be a better way, and pulling together a lot of the great ideas, suggestions, and best practices into a bill that we worked together on, known as the Fix Our Forest Act. Different than a House version by the same name, but a truly bipartisan, thoughtful bill that puts us on offense when it comes to preparing for, mitigating, or responding to wildfires, to help build more resilient communities, because it's not just rural areas that are burning up.
Senator Sheehy, if that legislation becomes law, what's different? How does it change things?
It's going to open up more active management of our forest areas, especially those adjacent to high population, high risk fire areas. And I think what we've seen over the past century, as we do in, I guess, all areas in America, as we try to decide what our policies are going to be regarding any particular subject, the pendulum swings. And early in the century, the pendulum swung far to one direction, which was our forests are a resource, cut them all down. So the correction of that was, let's protect all of our national landscapes completely. And we overcorrected.
And default to protection always.
And we overcorrected. We got to the point where, all right, don't touch these forests, don't cut down trees. So I think the management of our forests, the pendulum swinging back, we're realizing we can't just put a chain around our forests, put a padlock on it and say don't touch. Because now we're seeing one of the outcomes of that is excessive fuel load, no road access to fight fires, no cohesive policy for protection around our communities.
You can catch the rest of my conversation with the senators on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform.